Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the two most played champions in every single role by pro players in patch 7.23. So we're going to be taking a look and breaking down what different pro players use on these champions, because some pro players are using one rune page, others are using a different rune page. So we're going to take a look and try to break down when you would want to use a certain rune page and which would be better. And if you do spend the time on these champions in this patch, they are being played by the pros, so if you know how to play them well, they are going to be the strongest here in 7.23. So we're going to start off in the top lane here, and the first champion that is being played a ton in this patch is Ornn. So Ornn right now is the best top laner, or he's the top laner that for a tank right now, he's being played the most by pro players, and he's just an overall very solid tank top lane pick. He really doesn't have too many bad matchups. He does really well into most melee matchups. He struggles a little bit against some ranged matchups, but that's to be expected if you are a melee top laner. He transitions really nicely into the mid to late game as well. He's just overall a very solid top lane pick. Now for the rune pages on Ornn, there's two different pages that people are running right now. So if you're up against a melee top laner, most people are running Grasp of the Undying. If you're up against a ranged top laner though, most people are taking Aftershock. Grasp is great into melee matchups because you will be able to auto the enemy champion a lot and you will be able to trade. But if you're up against someone like a Teemo or Kayle in the laning phase and you're not going to be able to auto attack and actually use your grasp, then Aftershock is just going to be the better option in that situation. You need to be autoing to make grasp useful in the laning phase, and if you're not going to be able to do that, then take Aftershock in that situation. So next up here is going to be Jace, and anytime I do a video taking a look at what pro players are playing or what they're using, Jace is almost always here. He's just a really good pick if you put time into him and you really know how to abuse his strong laning phase. Now, as for the runes on Jace, there's two different pages right now that are going around that most pros are using. It's either Electrocute or Summon Airy. Now, I think that if you're in a matchup to where you're very easily going to be able to all in the enemy top laner, if they're playing a squishy top laner, someone like a Teemo or a Gangplank, and you know you're going to be able to all in them in the laning phase, then I think Electrocute is better in that situation. This is the page that Someday is running on his Jace. He only takes Electrocute. It doesn't really matter the lane, but other players I've noticed are taking Electrocute in lanes that they can all in early game and they can look to get an advantage. And then as for Airy on Jace, it's just going to be the more consistent option. I'd say around 80% of pro players are running Airy right now on Jace, and it's mainly because during the first 3 levels, you're going to get on average just a lot more damage off with Airy than you would with Electrocute. Unless you are going super aggressive in the early game and you're looking to go for a lot of all-ins, then Airy is just going to add for a lot more damage in the early game on Jace, especially because whenever the enemy walks up to go CS a minion, you can just easily poke them with your auto attacks. You're gonna get the Airy proc, and it's just gonna add up over the laning phase. So I would say that I would only run Electrocute if you know 100% that you're gonna be able to all in the enemy for the first few levels. If you are in a harder matchup though, to where you're really not gonna be able to kill the top laner during the first few levels, if they are playing a tank in the top lane and you're just looking to poke them out during the laning phase, then I would run Airy in that situation. Now if we take a look at the jungle here, the two junglers that are dominating high elo right now, and the two that pretty much every single pro player is playing, is Kha'Zix and Jarvan. So if we take a look at Kha'Zix here first, he is one of the strongest junglers in the current meta because the early game is so important right now, and if you just get the slightest lead in the early game with a champion like Kha'Zix, your ability to take over the game and just make the enemy jungler completely useless is very easy to do so in this patch. With the Electrocute on Kha'Zix and with the sudden impact as well, it just allows him to deal so much damage, and his 1v1 potential in this patch is just really strong. And then as for Jarvan, very similar to Kha'Zix, he does have the potential to snowball lanes very easily in the early game. He's one of the only junglers that can really successfully pull off a level 2 gank. Taking the red buff and heading straight to mid lane is a common route for Jarvan, and you can just blow the enemy mid laner's flash, or you can even pick up a kill sometimes and really get your mid laner the advantage in the early game. And then for the rune pages on Zven, everything that you'd run on him is very similar between pro junglers. The only thing that changes really is whether they would take Alacrity or Coup de Grace. I feel like this is really just personal preference on Zven. Personally, I think Coup de Grace would be the better option, just because in the early game when you are ganking, it is going to add a little bit more to your full damage combo. Alacrity will allow you to clear the jungle a little bit faster though, so I think it really is just personal preference here. But all the other runes on Kha'Zix like Electrocute, Triumph, Sudden Impact, Zombie Ward, and Relentless Hunter, those are ones that every single pro player is running right now on Zven. If we move over to the mid lane now, the two most played in this patch are Azir and Xerath. So if we take a look at Azir here first, Azir is always going to be a pretty strong pick in the higher ranks, and he's always going to be a pretty good pick as long as you know how to play him well. So it's not too much of a surprise that he's on this list for this patch. Now there's two different rune pages right now that people are running on Azir. It's either taking Airy or Comet. Most players are taking Comet on Azir. This is the page that Bjergsen is running on his Azir right now. He's taking the Comet, he's also taking Cheap Shot, so it just allows you to deal quite a bit of damage in the early game with your WQ combo. Your WQ is almost going to guarantee that you do land your Comet because your Q is going to slow, and unless they have a gap closer, they really aren't going to be able to dodge the Comet. And then as for this Xerath pick, he's doing very well in the preseason. A lot of pro players have started to pick him up, and it's for a few different reasons. I think the first one is because magic resist did not get increased on a lot of champions, and therefore it's just very easy for Azir to poke enemies out in the laning phase. The base MR on champions isn't very high, so if you hit a few skill shots in the laning phase as Xerath, then you will very easily be able to poke them out of lane. He also does really well right now with the Mana Flow Band rune as well as the Scorch rune. Mana Flow Band just means he's basically never going to run out of mana in the laning phase. You've got your passive, and then you've also got Mana Flow Band, so it just means basically you're going to have infinite mana in the laning phase as Xerath, and you're very easily going to be able to poke the enemy out of lane. So for the AD carry role in this patch, the most played right now are Jhin and Miss Fortune. Now keep in mind that these are the most played, so even though Ezreal is a champion that's being played a lot in this patch, he also does have a very high ban rate, so he isn't being played as much as Jhin and Miss Fortune. So as for Jhin's page right now, it started off in the patch with, I think people were experimenting with running Press the Attack and Fleet Footwork, but it feels like a lot of people have settled now on the Comet as the main rune here and the main keystone on their Jhin. Comet just does synergize pretty well with this kit because it's almost guaranteed that you're going to land that when you do hit your W in the laning phase and also when you do hit your ultimate. So overall, it is going to be the best option on Jhin. Now I've got Prey and Doublelift's page here up on screen. The only thing that differs between the two pages is Prey is taking Scorch and then Doublelift is taking Gathering Storm. I feel like Prey's page taking the Scorch is a little bit better just because Gathering Storm does not give you anything until 10 minutes into the game, and because having a good early game right now is pretty important, I'd be taking the Scorch in most lanes. If you're in a lane to where you just don't think you're going to be able to do anything at all and you're going to have to get to the mid to late game to be useful, then I would take Gathering Storm in that situation. But if you are playing in an aggressive lane, if you do have an aggressive support, then I would be taking the Scorch. And then for Miss Fortune, the reason to why she's seeing a ton of play right now is just simply because her early game is pretty much unmatched by any other AD carry. Her ability to poke out the enemy during the first few levels and just get the lane advantage is unlike any other AD right now, and it's not even hard to do either, which makes her an even stronger pick. And then as for your runes on Miss Fortune, there are two different pages right now, either Comet or Airy, and it does depend on the lane as to which one you'd want to run. So if you are in a lane to where you've got someone like a Leona or a Blitzcrank or a Thresh and you're looking to all in the laning phase, then I would be taking the Comet on Miss Fortune as well as Cheap Shot. That's the page that Zven is running on his Miss Fortune in this patch, and it is performing pretty well. Now Airy is actually the one in solo queue that does have the better win percent. It's kind of hard to tell between Comet and between Airy, which one is definitively better, but I think Airy is best in situations to where you're not really going to be able to look for all-ins in the laning phase and you're just looking to use your poke whenever your E is off cooldown and whenever your Q is off cooldown. If you're not going to be able to all-in a whole lot during the laning phase, then I think Airy is better in that situation. And then lastly here, to round out the video, the two most played supports in this patch are Karma and Leona. So if you're looking for an aggressive support in the laning phase that's easy to play and that can just sit back and poke the enemy out super easily, I'd be playing Karma in this patch. Taking the area on her and also taking Ultimate Hat and Transcendence just means that your ultimate is going to be on a super short cooldown. You're going to be able to use that a ton in the laning phase to poke the enemy out of lane. And I think that Karma right now, paired up with someone like Misfortune as well, it's one of the most oppressive laning phases in the game. You're pretty much guaranteed to win it, and it doesn't really take too much skill to win either. So I just think that Karma, one of the easiest and most effective supports for this patch. And then for Leona right now, in my opinion, is one of the strongest aggressive all-in supports that you can play in this patch. Her level 2 all-in with Aftershock is just unmatched by any other support. It just makes her super tanky when she's going for an all-in. If you take Ignite on her as well and you get your Aftershock damage off, this champion just does so much damage in the early game, and she's also super tanky. So if you are up against a support like a Soraka, a Sona, any of these just really squishy supports in the laning phase, then Leona is a great pick in that situation. Now there's two different pages here I've got up on screen. One is the one that Afromu is running and the other is one that Gorilla is running. So based on these pages, it seems like these two players have kind of different outlooks on their Leona and how they want to play her during the early game. With the Afromu page here, he's taking the Celerity and he's also taking the Scorch. So what this is telling me is Afro is not messing around in the laning phase. He's looking to all in the early game, and he's looking to gain an advantage at level 2. And then what the Gorilla page is telling me is that he's looking to not have the strongest laning phase. He's looking to ward more, he's looking to roam more, and he's looking to do more around the map. I think it really does depend on your playstyle as to which page you'd want to run on Leona. So that is going to be all for this video. These are the champions right now in this patch that if you can play to a good level and you've put a lot of time into them, then they are going to be the strongest picks for 7.23. If you guys did enjoy this video, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I'll see you in my next video.